So that's kind of like another thing to throw you for a loop. You're like, oh, I wonder if he's actually just screwing around again. But that's not the case.
It makes you feel shitty for all the people in the 20th century that
Oh yeah,
had to live in some of those places.
yeah.
I wish they had weed in South Park back then, like poor people would have had a lot better time.
Yeah, they probably would have
Oh, I mean, they had
too.
weed, but like strict
Yeah.
regimen of weed in South Park when you go to the psych ward.
God. Hey, El Toddo.
What's going on?
We got a podcast, The Buff and the Blazer. If I was a listener, where would I go to find more?
You can check us out on our website, thebuffandtheblazer.com. Drew over there writes a article that goes along with every single episode.
You can find all kinds of little extras on the articles, and you can listen to the podcast right there. Also, you can subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And, of course, we're on Twitter at Buff and Blazer. Follow us there.
Get those clicks, people.
The Buff and the Blazer.
Welcome to the Buff and the Blazer, episode 43. I'm Drew, and as always, I'm here with my good buddy, Mr. El Toddo.
Yo.
What's up, man?
Nothing much.
I'm kind of surprised with your suggestion this week.
Oh, taking it back, on all of our bios.
It was a pleasant surprise.
On the platforms, it says doing movies old and new.
Yeah.
Haven't really done anything too old.
We haven't really, scratched
I think 2017, I think, is the oldest movie we've done. So we had to take it back right here.
Yeah, we have to take up our old game a bit. So yeah, we spent half the week trying to rack our brains around what we were going to review for this episode. And it's been kind of a slow couple weeks, I think, with new releases.
Or stuff we have access to.
Yeah, or that. Or stuff we're not willing to go into a crowded movie theater to watch.
They're not even open in my county.
Yeah. And I won't even go in mine if there are some that are open. So, but the film we are going to discuss on episode 43 is a classic from 1975, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, starring Jack Nicholson and directed by Milos Forman. And this was the first time you've seen this film, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I've seen it a bunch, and it'd been a little while since my last viewing, but I just every time I watch it, it's like I renew my love for it. But what did you think as a first-time viewer watching this film?
Kind of feel like a dummy for never seeing it before.
Yeah.
I've always kind of not really wanted to see older movies for whatever reason. And
yeah.
I've always known about this movie and heard people talk about it stuff and how it's so great. But I just never seen it, and my lady was like, hey, you want to watch this? And I was like, oh, hell yeah, let's do it. And it worked out because I texted you and was like, you want to review this week? And you were like, oh, yeah, that's a classic. So
yeah,
I was super impressed. One, that I didn't lose interest because it was old.
Right.
Well,
the movie's 95% talking, right?
Yeah.
It's 95% dialogue, I'd say.
Crazy dialogue.
Yeah.
But I didn't lose interest at all, and I was the digital remastering or whatever they did, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It looked great.
Yeah.
It was on Netflix. It didn't look all old and grainy, so right off the bat I was pretty into it. And then it just kind of took me along for a pretty wacky story that I enjoyed a lot, and I absolutely loved the end of the movie.
I thought you would.
So I was just kind of blown away that there's a movie that good out there that I had never even thought twice about seeing before.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I wasn't kidding when I said this one was a classic. Real quick here, I just want to see to confirm this, but I'm assuming this is on AFI's Top 100 Films. Let me see. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Yep, number 33 on the AFI's top 100 of all time.
Okay.
So yeah, it's like a beloved classic film. Here's the thing, like Jack Nicholson was already kind of a famous actor at this time. Like he was already at the top of his game. And this just like pushed him into the great territory, like solidified him as one of the great all-time actors. And I don't know, this film really tackles like a heavy topic and a heavy subject matter, but it's so humorous. Like there's a lot of good laughs in this movie. And there's like genuine joy that you get through the characters. So it's really bizarre. Like if you were to read the synopsis of the film to somebody, it'd be like, I don't know if I want to watch a film like that.
Might sound really depressing.
Yeah. And I mean,
it is in some ways.
Yeah, and the way the film ends, it's not the happiest of endings, but I'd say like a good 70% of the film, you're having a great time. So yeah, every time I watch it, it like renews my love for this movie. And I told you before the podcast started, I was like, man, I forgot how funny this movie was.
Yeah, it's made me think twice about having certain types of attitudes about old movies. Like
yeah.
I've never even like thought twice about wanting to go back and watch like the greats from the 60s or the 50s. Like I've never even watched one my whole life.
Yeah.
I've always just been like, I don't give a shit about that. And the originality of this movie kind of slapped me across the face just from like a character arc.
Yeah.
This movie's nothing like anything we review.
No.
And it was just like such an original kind of different way of storytelling that I liked and caught me way off guard. And I'm like, man, why isn't there a ton of movies like this coming out nowadays that are just not the freaking classic hero arc, you know?
Yeah. Here's the thing too. So like, it's not original in the sense that it was written for film because it's based off of a book.
Okay.
But I mean, and the book is considered a classic too. Like, did you ever go through high school reading this book at all?
No, dude.
Okay, yeah. So, like, I know this is, like, required reading for a lot of, like, senior English classes and stuff like that. But I think the film, as far as I know, the film differs from the book in a lot of different ways. So it is adapted for the screen. And I've never read the book personally. But I don't know if I'd get as much enjoyment from the story of the book as I would of the film.
The facial expressions make so much of this movie that
oh yeah,
it would maybe be hard to get the same reaction off of words on a page. I don't know.
Right. But yeah, speaking of old films, like if you ever were just like, yeah, maybe I should give old films a shot. The AFI Top 100 Films of All Time is like a list you can just literally throw a dart on and just pick one. And you'll find something good on it. But yeah, it says a lot. This film's number 33 on that list, so it's pretty high. So yeah, it's no secret. Like I really enjoy this movie, and like I said, one of the things that struck me watching it again last night was that the film is mostly dialogue. And with these older films, a lot of the movies are just dialogue. There's not a whole lot of fancy camera work or anything elaborate going on. But when the writing's so good and the screenplay is so strong and there's a lot of good lines, you don't care. It's just you can watch them in a room talking for 2 hours. And this movie's like, what, 2.5 hours?
Yeah, it's pretty long.
It's long. And it doesn't really feel as long as it is. I don't know. It's a really good way of diving into characters and really getting to know the characters. And I think that's one of the biggest strengths of the film is the way the characters are written.
Yeah.
And how each of them has their own kind of personalities and how they all interact with Mac. It's just a really interesting dynamic between all the characters that make it enjoyable.
Yeah, it's a really cool kind of character story in that he's involved with every other aspect of every character's life in the movie. Whatever's going on with them, he's directly involved pretty much.
Yeah.
But you like get to know each character and their tics like so well throughout the movie.
Right.
That it's like really evenly balanced.
Yeah.
That's what struck me a lot too. It's like Jack is definitely the leading role,
mm-hmm.
but there's so much baggage carried by all the other characters, like emotional baggage
Oh yeah.
throughout the movie, that it was just like this really even distribution of, I guess, how much you have stake in each character, right?
Yeah. And yeah, what's interesting about Jack Nicholson's character is like, yeah, he is the main character, but he enhances every other character on screen.
Yeah.
Like brings out their full, kind of fleshes them out, and they really like show their potential. And that's what I think makes the story interesting, but at the same time it makes you feel for McMurphy at the end of the story because everyone grows to like really love him at the end. Because he's a total like he seems like a prick when you first meet him, and he walks in, he's like arrogant and this bad boy, but then when he comes in, he really starts to interact with everyone at the hospital, and he just becomes one of those like almost like an anti-hero kind of character where you really grow to like him.
Yeah, he's almost like the ADD kid in school.
Right.
That wasn't a bad kid. He just couldn't hold still.
Yeah.
Kind of thing, you know? And he would...
Yeah.
That's like the vibe that I got from him a lot.
Could you imagine anyone else in that role?
I mean, no. But
It's-
yes,
I mean-
if they remade it like Jim Carrey.
Oh, yeah.
If
I
they
never thought of
remade
that.
it.
Right. All right, so I have a
Jack
list here.
Black.
I know we're kind of like into character already, but it's all right. Here's a quick rundown of actors that were considered for this role originally.
Am I
You
even going to
had-
know most of them?
I think you might. Kirk Douglas, Gene Hackman,
Uh,
Marlon Brando, and Burt Reynolds. I feel like Burt Reynolds was that 70s actor that was considered for every major role.
yeah.
All right, I'm digressing. Let's go into the story a bit.
All right, and there's obviously no spoilers. The movie's fucking 45 years old. Or 35 years. How old is it? 75. 45 years old, yeah.
It's been on the AFI Top 100 for a while, I think, so it's we're totally spoiling this movie.
Well, yeah.
There's no way around it. So the way it starts off, like the film opens up with kind of a weird shot. It's like you get the landscape and the sunrise, and then what is that? The police vehicle coming? Is that what that was?
I can't even remember now.
Yeah, it opens up like really weird, and then you get some of that like really quirky orchestral music.
Yeah, I just remember the vibe was very like off in the beginning.
Yeah,
Like, you
it
know,
matches all that weird classical music they play on the on the record player for all the inmates.
Yeah, that stuff will drive you fucking nuts.
But anyway, so we're introduced to Jack, our McMurphy, and
Isn't like one of the first scenes when he meets with the doctor?
yeah,
Okay.
they have that. And from what I understand, that scene was improvised.
It felt really smooth.
Yeah, I felt like Jack was just being Jack. Like, I don't know. He has this like swagger about him in all his roles. But he has some really great like one-liners in this whole film. Like throughout
It kind
the
of
whole film.
bombards you with greatness, right? The dialogue and
Yeah.
the level of acting between all the characters and how kind of neatly and intricately tucked in every character is. It's kind of hard to pick out specific scenes and remember certain lines when you're trying to remember the movie, right?
Yeah. So then like we're introduced to him, and then we kind of just get like this massive introduction to all the main like patients in the ward. And then it's all kind of just like how their interactions become more and more intense throughout the film. But like, let me ask you this. So you're introduced to McMurphy, and then the story progresses. Do you feel like, well, what was your thought when you first were introduced to the character McMurphy, like in the story?
That he wasn't really crazy.
He was just kind of like a jokester, like
He was just because he was in prison, right? And
yeah, He got transferred.
Yeah, I think I got the sense that he was like playing the crazy card to weasel his way out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I got right off the bat.
Yeah.
And then as it started to progress and he got to meet the characters and you could tell he was like taking an interest in each one of them.
Right.
And wanting to like help each one of them
Mm-hmm.
in his own way, even though he's like trying to play off like he's as crazy as all of them.
Yeah.
It was really interesting, man. And just like you can tell that he just wants them to be happy.
Yeah.
Right?
In a weird
like
way.
like early on you get the vibe that like, oh, he's going to try and like be the hero for this entire group of dudes, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But it is also crazy that he can never end up pulling it together. But I don't know. It's hard to describe. It's like this very kind of classroom ADD kid.
Yeah.
Feeling
That's probably
that
a
I
good
get
analogy.
from his character, you know?
Yeah. The
And
kid
there was
that
like
comes
a
in.
very kind of classroom way of it. Reminded me of elementary school.
Right.
Even though they're all smoking cigarettes and gambling and shit. But
Yeah.
just like the social dynamic reminded me of like an elementary school.
Let me ask you about. Okay, so watching this again, there's a clear like power dynamic going on, I think.
Okay.
So
With the nurse?
yeah, so you have Nurse Ratchet, who's clearly like the person in charge. She has like her schedule set, everything is in order. She sets up her meetings. And then you have McMurphy who comes in and he starts to shake up things a bit. Now, it's interesting because I feel like they're like anti-characters almost. So you have Nurse Ratchet who's seeking control on her like ultra sterilized side of the spectrum where she's like the straight person. But then you have McMurphy on the other side who's trying to exert his own power, I think, by undermining her, but also like getting in with the patients.
Mm-hmm.
And they clash. And there's like she's really almost like the antagonist protagonist relationship is between those two.
Yeah, totally. She's the villain.
And what caught me this time I watched it was when it was the scene where all the doctors were in the boardroom, and I guess it was after their boat incident.
Okay.
And they're discussing like if he's really nuts or whatnot, and he's asking. And I think he says something about like the only one that he connects with in the room is Nurse Ratchet, and the doctor's like, "Yeah, it's you, Mildred." And then that's when she's like, "Yeah, I think we can help him." And to me, that was like her way of saying, "I think I can break this motherfucker down." Like,
yeah,
it's very like it was weird. It was like a very much this power struggle, and I think that's a major factor in the plot of the film. And it's like he has his ultimate. He reaches his peak of power when he has her on the floor and he physically has his hands on Nurse Ratchet. Like that's when he just can't take it anymore. But then she gets the last laugh by totally breaking him and then like destroying him at the end.
Yeah, cutting out his fucking brains.
Yeah. So it's kind of a weird like structure in terms of story. It's more of like a back and forth. I don't know. I guess like when you think of it, it's almost like you could look at it as like a boxing analogy almost.
Okay.
It's like you have the two characters, and it's almost like they spend the entirety of the film training, and once they get to their final showdown at the end, one of them wins. But it's not the person you'd expect. Like Rocky doesn't win at the end. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah, and I think that's why I liked the resolution so much.
Yeah.
Is because it did catch me off guard.
Okay, so you didn't see it coming.
However, I will say, though, if he had killed Nurse Ratchet, that would have caught me off guard, too. If he would have just choked her to death, you know?
Yeah.
At the end of the movie, that would have... I'd have been like, holy shit, movies in the 70s are no joke.
Or fuck, like he could have still...
Because it's a violent-ass
killed...
scene.
Oh, yeah. And even before that point, there's something pretty gruesome that happens, too.
Yeah.
To Billy.
Yeah. getting back to what your question was, it's like he's pushing the vote to watch the World Series, right?
Yeah.
And she continuously like gives him the option of like a way to victory.
Yeah.
And then calls it on a technicality both times, right?
Right.
And that's her like the ultimate. She's like the billboard for passive aggressive type of authority.
Yep.
And yeah, it's an uncomfortable kind of back and forth between all of them.
And that's the thing too. Like McMurphy is very upfront. Like he doesn't play those fucking games. He's just all about like, this is what I want, and we need to do this.
Yeah, he's an action man.
Yeah, for sure. But now that I think about it, that would have been interesting if he had killed Nurse Ratchet, because you could have still had the film end the same way it does.
Oh, totally.
With him.
Yeah.
And it would have been like, it almost would have been even crazier that way.
That would have been sweet.
Yeah, that's interesting. But yeah, I never thought I kind of see it as like a boxing film. It's really weird. And I don't know, I'm not saying that this film is like based off of Rocky or anything, but Rocky is also a film of the 70s.
I see it as like a substitute teacher, bad kid movie.
Yeah.
But in the adult world. Like the same social dynamic as a elementary school classroom.
Yeah.
But with adults.
Right.
And adult consequences.
Yeah.
That's like the biggest kind of like overall message that I got. Or what it made, I won't say I got the message, but like what it made me think of in terms of trying to relate that storyline to something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Man, well, I'm glad you didn't see the ending coming, because you're usually pretty good about that.
Yeah, and we could talk about it because I was pretty bummed when he came walking down with after he's had his lobotomy. You know?
Yeah.
But then when they have Chief come over, and that whole side of the ending, I was just like, "Oh, this is awesome!" It's like,
yeah,
it's a brutal murder, but it's a mercy murder.
Yeah,
you know, like it was so kind of deep and like, and cool, you know.
And there's like a genuine like respect and caring between Chief and him too.
Yeah,
like they developed this real strong bond.
Will Sampson. Yeah,
he's so good in this movie.
I love the part when they're playing basketball and he starts finally like playing.
Yeah,
and he's like strutting up and down.
Yeah.
It's like one of my favorite parts of the movie.
I know. It's cool to see Jack bust out his basketball.
Yeah, I was like...
his basketball chops.
Yeah, that's a sweet little... That's the only time in my life I've ever seen him in person is at Laker games.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Every single one I've been to, he's been to. He was there.
Oh, sweet. Does he still go? Like, he's still been... I mean...
He was going this past year until...
Yeah.
Till there wasn't any games.
But he was still going up to that point?
I believe so. I don't think every game.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure he was there on Kobe's last game a couple years back.
Damn, that's so cool. But yeah, talking about the ending though, what's also really cool about that is he gets like the first kind of electro shock therapy.
Looked brutal.
That first round. And then he kind of comes out looking pretty jacked up, but he's actually just playing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like another thing to throw you for a loop. You're like, oh, I wonder if he's actually just screwing around again. But that's not the case.
It makes you feel shitty for all the people in the 20th century that had to live in some of those places.
Yeah.
I wish they had weed in South Park back then, you know, like poor people would have had a lot better time.
Yeah, they probably would have
Well, I mean, they had weed, but like strict regimen of weed in South Park when you go to the psych ward.
God. Yeah, it's really awful. And like when you see that shit, it's just, I mean, we really weren't doing it that long ago. That's what's nuts.
Yeah.
It's like it's not that long ago we were doing that kind of shit.
Oh, yeah.
So it's pretty scary. But yeah, another interesting thing is that this was filmed in an actual mental hospital in Oregon, the Oregon State Mental Hospital. So like everything you see is all filmed on location in a real building. And I think it adds to that kind of gross, sterilized looking atmosphere, I guess, in the film.
Yeah.
I don't know. Those
Yeah,
places
it
creep
looks
me out.
extremely correct, right? Like,
Yeah.
no, it didn't look like sound stages and things like that.
No.
And like, especially, I loved all the outdoor stuff on the basketball court.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I keep coming back to like this elementary school kind of thing. It just keeps coming back to me.
Yeah, like recess, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, they literally have recess. They're on a school bus.
Yeah, the bus and the fishing trip is like one of my favorite parts of the movie.
Oh, yeah. That's like one of the most joyous parts of the whole film.
Yeah.
When they go out fishing. God, it's really, really beautiful.
For a movie being that old to still elicit that kind of raw emotion. You're you're like a kid watching it when they bust out and take the bus and all that.
Yeah.
It's so awesome.
The other cool thing too is like the dialogue and a lot of the jokes. I mean, they age really well. Like in terms of like some of the humor, it's still real witty.
Yeah.
For today, like a modern audience. Well, like maybe some of the like language and some of the jokes, like especially dealing with Chief in the beginning, are like a bit dated for it coming out in the 70s.
Don't tell the cancel army about this movie.
Yeah. But for the most part, all of the writing, like the jokes and stuff, they're real witty and still hold up.
Let's move into some of these characters, man, because that's where the best part of the movie is. I think.
Yeah, let's do that. Let me just ask you right off the bat, did you have a favorite character at all?
Yeah, Martini.
Martini was your favorite?
Yeah, I love Danny DeVito so much. He's definitely on the freaking comedy television Mount Rushmore, I think.
Yeah.
For his work in Sunny and Taxi, but he was my favorite, man. And he looks so much like my brother-in-law when he's young. I hadn't seen him looking that young since I've watched some episodes of Taxi back in the day.
Yeah.
And he looks so much like my brother-in-law. It's insane.
That's hilarious.
But he was my favorite. I really enjoyed a lot of the characters. Tabor, Christopher Lloyd.
Oh yeah.
He's kind of got this like young badass vibe compared to his crazy old man vibe that he's had like the rest of his career that I can relate to, you know?
Yeah.
What about you, man? Who's like, because like Jack is obviously awesome, but who stood out to you?
Oh God, I love Chief.
Yeah.
Like Chief is just, it's hard not to love Chief.
Yeah.
And then I love the scene where they're sitting down on the bench, like getting ready to be punished. And Chief is just like, juicy fruit.
Yeah.
And then McMurphy's like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
That's a great scene. And I just love how Chief is playing everybody. And like the whole scene on the basketball court and stuff. There's not a lot of dialogue with Chief, but it's just his actions and his mannerisms and like the way he is. I love the Chief as a character.
Yeah, I love when he props up Jack to jump the fence.
Yeah.
And I love that whole scene of jumping the fence for some reason. I was just like, this is so awesome. There's like no cuts or anything. He's totally climbing and then jumping onto the tree and stuff. Like, I don't know if that was a stuntman or whatever, but
oh yeah,
I was just like, how cool is that to see in an older movie? Like, that was pretty gnarly.
Oh yeah.
Like, obviously there probably wasn't real barbed wire on that fence.
Yeah.
But it was still like a 10-foot fence, and then to jump onto a tree limb.
No, he was up high.
It was sweet, dude.
Yeah. That's
so
like
good.
That's actually one cool thing about older films is like the stunts they do are pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's before you had any of the safety stuff, so that was really cool. There's an interesting little just like side note that I thought was hilarious, but like 3 of the actors in this film have gone on to be villains in Batman movies.
Okay, hit me.
So you got Jack Nicholson obviously as the
Yeah.
Joker.
Yeah.
You got Danny DeVito as the Penguin.
Oh yeah.
And then he was also in Batman Returns though, but he's like the character that has like the monkey and he has like the music box that shoots out fucking machine guns and shit. But like the cast list is all over the place here. I can't find his name. But just kind of a side note, yeah, 3 like Batman villains.
That's funny.
Oh, there we go. It's Will Sam. Oh no, Fredrickson, the Vincent Schiavelli.
Okay.
He plays Fredrickson. So he was like a villain in Batman Returns.
All right, I know that
Yeah.
dude now.
Yeah, so three Batman villains out of this cast.
I really enjoyed Harding, William Redfield.
Yeah, he's another. They're all kind of just likable in their own way.
Yeah. And then when you find out that a lot of them are there voluntarily,
Yeah.
it's like, holy shit, they're just fucking nuts.
Yeah, that's another like crazy reveal in the film too.
Yeah. Shout out to Sidney Lassick. He plays Cheswick, and he has some of like the most epic meltdowns,
Yeah.
emotional meltdowns I've ever seen on camera.
Yeah. I'm trying to see here. So, Jack Nicholson won Best Actor for this film, and Brad Dourif was nominated for Best Supporting Actor. Who was Brad Dourif?
Which one was he in this?
Oh, was he Billy?
Oh yeah, he's Billy.
Yeah. Yeah, so he got nominated, and then I think LouisFletcher won Best Supporting too. She played Nurse Ratchet, so I think she won too.
So this thing cleaned house.
Yeah. So I got Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Picture, Director, Actress, Actor, and then it got nominated for like everything else.
Damn.
So yeah, it was. I think they were saying it swept the major categories for the first time since like 1934 up to that point. And then the next film to do it was Silence of the Lambs.
Really, I'm surprised Silence of the Lambs cleaned that much house for a horror.
Yeah. So that one was a big showing at the Oscars too. But yeah, I think it's a testament to like how well made this film is, but the performances, and that's what I wanted to talk a little bit about too before we move on, is there's a lot of interesting stories where some of the actors, like some of this character acting was actually affecting them
Really?
to some degree, and particularly Danny DeVito actually, which was interesting.
Really?
So he was like having a little bit of a hard time saying that like he's starting to feel a little weird about this role. And I guess they had someone on set that was an actual doctor that like they would go to just in case. And the doctor was telling Danny DeVito, like, as long as you don't confuse yourself with this character and you identify yourself separately, you're fine.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Like you could, because there's been other actors, right, that have had like kind of mental breakdowns after playing a character,
Yeah.
right? Isn't that happened before?
Well, I mean, one like real famous example that people like to think about is Heath Ledger with the Joker. Although I think it's speculation maybe in terms of how it affected him, but you hear it with a lot of different people at times, I think, in certain roles.
I think I've heard Jim Carrey say in an interview that he had a rough time after doing Man on the Moon
Mm-hmm.
because he got like so deep into playing Andy
Yeah.
and how crazy and kind of awesome Andy was.
Mm-hmm.
But I could see that. Just if you just think about it in terms of physiology, like Sidney Lassick's character, Cheswick, think about how
Well, he was another one,
up
actually.
and down his blood pressure was
Oh, yeah.
just playing that character.
So, like, reading a little bit about him, too, like, he was another one that was having some trouble because he would kind of go into these, like, emotional mood swings, and it was starting to get to him, and, like, they were saying he got so overwhelmed watching that last bit of the film between Chief and Jack Nicholson, like McMurphy,
Yeah.
that they actually removed him from set. because he was so upset about it. So like,
That's some deep shit right there, man.
yeah, for real. So that just shows you like how much dedication went into the acting in this film. Like they go full on into the minds of these people.
Well, think about like how worked up Cheswick gets.
Oh yeah.
Have you ever been that worked up at any point in your life? I haven't even been close
No. And
to
like
being that hysterical and like.
And not even as a child, I don't think I ever remember anything like that.
No, like maybe tantrums as like a toddler or something, but like.
Yeah. Shit you don't remember.
Yeah, like as an adult or even as a teenager, I've never even been within like firing distance of that emotional level. And to have to do that on command all day, like that's gotta fucking wear on you.
Yeah, for sure. So there's like a lot of interesting, with these kinds of films, there's lots of interesting background stuff that goes on between the actors. Some pretty intense stuff.
I'm a little disappointed on like the caliber of kind of storytelling that we've done this year after seeing this movie.
Oh,
just
in terms of like the quality of writing and stuff?
Yeah, the quality of writing and the originality of character arc.
Oh yeah.
And this feels like really, really, really original compared to everything
I know,
we've been
right?
doing more recently.
Well, here's the thing too, like when you think about it, this is the 70s, 75 this movie came out. This is before Star Wars. This is before the Hollywood blockbuster was a thing. I think this is even before Jaws. But your writing had to be good because that's all there was. Like you weren't going to have some crazy special effects film that was going to have everyone, it was going to take everyone's attention away from the story.
Yeah.
Like the writing had to be good, the acting had to be good because that's all there was. Like there was nothing else. This film was all dialogue. And once like films like Star Wars come out, you can kind of like forgive some of the acting and some of the writing because you have all this cool special effects like taking your mind off of it, you know? Like all this spectacle.
Yeah, that's a good point. We just did a movie that was basically all dialogue.
Yeah.
And it was pretty good, but it wasn't anywhere near this.
No.
And it was a similar kind of vein, kind of like a bit of a mindfuck movie. But yeah, I'm struck by how...
Are you talking about I'm Thinking an Ending thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I should have said that.
Oh, no, that's fine.
But I'm just struck by like how much all of these supporting characters were involved.
Yeah.
And how deeply, and you kind of get to know and care about a pretty big chunk of characters in this movie.
Yeah.
And it doesn't just follow this normal good, evil hero arc.
Right,
It was completely flipped on its head.
Yeah.
And I feel like we don't get that enough.
No. And like the other crazy thing about it too is it's like while it is all a lot of dialogue and all dialogue, it's all dialogue taking place within one location almost.
Yeah.
Like in a 4-wall enclosure. And I think this film grossed $260 million at the time it came out, which is like in the 70s, that's huge.
How much?
$260 million.
Damn.
So like after a quick fact check,
Okay.
163.3 million. So I thought it was 260. 163.3 million in the 70s. Like that's huge.
Huge.
No one would drop that kind of money on a film like this today, I don't think.
No, that's a good point.
I mean, unless you had like every A-list actor in the room talking to each other like for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I guess you got to get people out, you actually have to have all of the glamour and glitz, and this movie's got none of it. It's like so raw.
Right.
And I think that's why it feels so real.
Yeah. And like while it is funny, there is like a grit to it and there's a darkness. It's kind of like a mixed bag, really. Which is like what here's a question for you. What genre would you stick a film like this in?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I guess like kind of maybe like preceding the psychological thriller genre a little bit.
It's like a psychological drama almost.
Yeah, right?
It's kind of its own thing.
It's really cool. I'm really glad we did it.
Yeah, me too.
I guess we're going to have to do some more older movies.
Yeah, we'll hack away at some of this top 100 from the AFI. But before we move on, was there anyone else you wanted to give a shout out to? Anyone that caught your eye?
No, I think I called out everybody who like really I was like had a connection with.
Yeah, and LouisFletcher does an awesome job as Nurse Ratchet. Like
Scatman Crothers, he plays Turkle. I did like his character. I like that he was like the down to party security guard, and he kind of like unleashed the emotional triumph of the movie.
That's another kind of cool connection. That's the him and Jack Nicholson again.
Yeah.
The Shining connection right there.
Ah.
Jack Nicholson was like the king of the 70s, man, in film.
How cool is that name, Scatman Crothers?
Oh, yeah.
It's like the coolest name ever.
Yeah, very cool. All right, let's see. So we got kind of the tech parts of the film, cinematography.
So for the 70s, it felt like nothing that crazy, but it felt really realistic.
Yeah.
And like I particularly liked the card room or the card table shots when they were having all their dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And to think about how deep kind of emotionally they were all kind of connecting during those moments.
Yeah.
And there was like a camera in the middle of the table.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the time, because a lot of them are from like the middle of the table perspective looking back.
Right.
And just to think like how in character they are with a camera right there, right?
Yeah.
Like right in the middle of all of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's weird when you think about it that way. Like, these guys have to do that. When you think about any kind of shoot, there is that bulky camera in front of everyone, and you have, like, a whole crew of people, and then you still got to be on your game.
Yeah.
So it's a lot different, I would imagine, when you're on set watching it.
Let me ask you something. Do you think it's easier to act the crazier characters or the ones that were like you can't really tell? So like, for example, like Harding, he doesn't really come across as crazy, and then as opposed to someone like Tabor or Martini, who's kind of like has this constant ticking, this like crazy tick. Do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah. You know, it's hard to say. I don't know, because like someone like Harding, right? While you can kind of just play it straight, like play the role straight, everyone else around you is playing nuts.
So
So like
that's a good
that could be
point.
hard for you to keep the straight line towed, like in that mindset. But like I always hear actors all the time when you have like huge actors that take these roles as villains in films, and they say how like those roles are just extremely fun because they can go like huge and not have to worry about it. Like they can go big and take risks because they're not playing someone like super serious or anything.
Yeah.
So I guess in a way, like it could also be freeing too to play someone that's really mentally disturbed like these guys.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like the way it was affecting the actors from what I read, that's where it's kind of like, I don't know what's easier to do. Maybe it's more exhausting doing that.
Yeah, overall it's probably like the most impressed I've been from a whole cast as a whole.
Yeah. Like I could
of
see
every
playing
movie
crazy.
we've done.
Yeah. It's like you have a great ensemble in this movie.
Yeah.
But like I could see playing someone nuts like for the first day being fun, but then after that you're just like, oh fuck, I don't know, I can't do this anymore.
Kind of like running a chainsaw. It's fun for like an hour, and then it's just a fucking shitty chore.
Yeah, after like the second tree.
It's a dangerous, shitty ass chore.
Yeah.
Fucking hot and filthy.
Yeah. I will say about the cinematography, it's cool if you watch films like from the 30s, then the 40s, then the 50s, you slowly start to see this progression of cinematographers getting more comfortable moving the camera.
Okay.
Like when you talk about silent era films like from the teens and 20s and like the early part of the 30s, a lot of the shots are stagnant and they're all about framing and cuts.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of movement, and everything is kind of set up in a left to right kind of space. So actors are moving from left to right on screen. And then as the decades go on, they get more and more comfortable with actors moving, more perspective shots, following actors and trucking. And a lot of that probably has to do with the technology of the cameras. The cameras are getting smaller.
Yeah.
But this film actually didn't seem that dated to me, because there were a few shots where you're in perspective, following Jack, I think, into the hospital, and it's from behind.
Yeah.
And then I know I was reading the last shot of the film is all in one take too.
Yeah.
So while there are a lot of stagnant shots in the mental hospital, which is understandable, because what, are you going to follow him around in one shot the whole time?
There are some that move though, like the part where he's trying to rally votes the second time around. I mean, the camera is following him walking around the ward.
Yeah. So I think it's almost like this, it's where the 70s starts to meet the 80s a bit.
Yeah.
Where you start to see the tech and the cinematography choices start to change a bit.
A lot of the outdoor stuff kind of gave me an 80s horror movie vibe.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's there's a couple different genres.
The boat scenes and the bus and all the stuff out in the yard. I got a total 80s horror movie vibe from all of that.
Yeah. Okay, so interesting. So Jaws comes out the same year.
Okay,
1975.
Cool.
So not that there's a connection between the two, but just for reference, Jaws is considered historically to be the first blockbuster film, the first Hollywood blockbuster.
Okay.
It broke records in terms of its gross. So these films came out at the same time.
Did you have a single favorite scene?
My favorite sequence is everything on the boat.
Okay.
That whole sequence is just, it's so much fun.
Yeah.
And I love the way it's shot on the boat. I love the characters that get placed in certain situations on the boat.
Yeah.
Of course you're going to have fucking, what's his name?
What, Cheswick?
Cheswick. Of course you're going to have him, steering the boat, right?
Yeah. That was probably a blast to shoot that scene.
Oh, yeah. It's, that whole sequence it's absolutely my favorite. What about you? Did you say the same thing, didn't you?
No, my favorite scene was when he jumps the fence. It's the precursor.
Okay.
It's basically the precursor to that.
Yeah, to sneak
because he
onto
gets into
bus.
the bus early. But when he
And
jumps the fence and jumps onto the tree, for some reason, I just absolutely love that scene.
Yeah, it's cool. And then, I love the basketball stuff. That's
that's
cool
also
too.
good.
It's nice and lighthearted. We can touch on score a little bit. There's, it has its own score, but I think, the core of what the score is, it all stems from what's being played on the record player in the ward.
It has a very make you go crazy vibe the whole movie.
Yeah. And it's it doesn't really match what's going on. And it has a weird quality like that. But I guess everything in the film just seems a little bit off. And I think that's very much intentional.
Yeah, very much the point. And I thought it was spot on.
Yeah. So I think it matched the vibe of the film completely. So you didn't hate it?
No, I didn't hate it.
Okay.
I actually liked it, even though it made me kind of go a little crazy, especially the record player in the ward.
Yeah.
I don't know why you do that to people, play that type of music, but I didn't. I loved it. It's a total positive for me.
Oh yeah. Well, I think we've reached that point in our podcast where we can discuss our love hates. Let's start with you.
I loved two things. The quality of acting was so damn good.
Yeah.
And how kind of original it felt to me. I know it's an old movie, but I've never seen it before. And after seeing a bunch of movies recently, just the main storyline and arc just felt so different and so kind of original. And the way it ended, I was just like, I wish every movie we saw was this much different from the last. That's what I love the most. And what I hated is that I haven't seen it up until now. It's I'm a dumbass. I should have seen it.
Yeah, good point.
But I also don't know if I would have appreciated it as much if I had seen it before we started actually doing the podcast. So in some ways, it might be the perfect time.
Yeah, sweet.
What about you?
And, well, I think we can mention, too, that the timing of this podcast is interesting because there's a whole spin-off TV series that Netflix just launched that's about Nurse Ratchet.
That's probably why they acquired the rights to this, because I had tried to watch it at some point in the past and went looking for it on streaming and couldn't find it anywhere for free.
Yeah.
So they probably got the rights to this to kind of kick off this new show, eh?
Yeah, it could be. But that show stars Sarah Paulson. And it's called Ratchet, so it's definitely like a spin-off. It takes place in the 40s, I think.
Oh, cool.
So
it's rife for a bunch of awesome performances by crazies.
yeah, for sure. So I think in terms of my love-hates, what I love about this film is that it's funny. And like there are actually legitimately joyous parts in this movie that make you laugh and smile.
Yeah.
And a lot of that is a testament to the acting and the actors and their performances. And I also love the chemistry between the actors in this film. Like, even when they squabble amongst each other, it's like they're like children almost, the way they act with each other.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's extremely entertaining and fun to watch. But yeah, every time I watch it, it just blows my mind at how much enjoyment I get out of it. So yeah, while it is kind of heavy and it deals with a heavy subject matter, there are a lot of like laugh out loud moments.
Yeah.
So I really love that. In terms of hates, I don't have a hate for this movie. It's even the runtime, like it's 2.5 hours long, but I never feel like I need to try and turn it off or anything. Like it gets boring. It all just works really well. Yeah, I don't have any hates for this movie. It's really hard.
It's hard. It's up there for a reason, right? On that top 100.
For sure. Let's slap a score on it because that's what we do. What do you got?
I'm giving it 5 bong loads.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a classic for a reason. I don't know
sure.
what I mean. There's nothing you can pick at. For me to see it 45 years after it came out and to enjoy it that much and be that engaged, just kind of.
It seems like you were kind of blown away by it.
I was, man.
Yeah.
I did not expect. I expected it to be entertaining. I didn't expect the story and the plot and everything to be as good as it was.
Yeah.
And the dialogue.
Right.
So yeah, man, I can't take nothing away from it. It's a 5er.
Sweet.
What about you?
I'm gonna go the same. I'm gonna give it a solid 5. 5 buckets of popcorn. It's this is a film you have to see. It's one of those films where, like, if there was a list of films you had to watch before you died, this would be on there. It's a classic. It's like a beloved film. It's a really like pivotal novel too that they still teach, and the film is really good. It's a really good adaptation too. It works on camera, so it's if you're a fan of film and you've never seen this, I mean, I don't know where you've been, but definitely give this a watch. And for those who haven't seen this film and maybe you've heard all kinds of things about it, or if you've just read the book, like, give the film a watch because it's really worth. I don't say this a whole lot, but it's worth 2.5 hours of your time.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a long film, but you don't ever feel like it's 2.5 hours.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird, and that's after saying it's mostly dialogue. So that says something about the writing, I think.
Yep, it's way better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
and I'll probably be watching it again.
Classic Jack Nicholson.
Yeah.
But before we leave off, do you feel like you could watch this film again and catch something? Like, do you think it has rewatch value?
Yeah, for sure. I could probably watch it a few more times and still get enjoyment out of it.
Or pick up things maybe you missed or new connections or something?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Not that it's like super twisty-turvy, connect the dots, but just catch... I probably would catch mostly like little acting things of like the characters that aren't speaking, the ones that are in the background.
Yeah.
Because I was paying attention to it, and I was like, man, they are all so locked in.
Yep.
It was really impressive.
So I think it's a solid recommends from you and I, right?
Yeah, it makes it's one of those movies that kind of validates the things were better in my day type of argument, because most of those arguments are quite bullshitty. But
Yeah.
this movie is probably,
Yeah.
the old man get off my lawn, like, oh, you don't know how good that is. It's like, well, if this movie is in that vein.
It's like back then we cared about characters. We read the scripts. But it's on Netflix, so
Yeah, it has.
Catch it
It
on Netflix.
wasn't. It wasn't for a long time.
yeah. I
It's
don't
not like it's
know
been
when
there
they recently
forever.
added it.
Because
But-
I've wanted to watch it before at points in my life and not been able to get it without downloading it or something.
Yeah.
So-
I'm actually curious to see if that Ratchet show's any good.
Well, and if you're an aspiring actor who wants to be on that show, you should definitely watch it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's all I got. It's a classic. What can we say? Shall we get out of here then?
Yeah, man.
I think we hit the mark. That's all we got. We did a bit of a throwback episode this week, so we hope you guys don't get too thrown off by it. But that's been episode 43 of The Buff and the Blazer. Talked a little bit about One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. You got to watch it. If you haven't seen it, give yourself 2.5 hours of enjoyment and watch a really, really great film. And if you have seen it, go watch it again.
Yeah.
We know you'll get more out of it.
For sure.
But we will catch you guys next week on the Buff and the Blazer podcast. Take care and have a good week, everybody.
Peace.